All right, what's going on? It's Bobby Skinner talking Giants. Want to do a video on Joe Schoen's bye week press conference. Obviously, coming when everything's heated. The Giants are 2-8, so you're paying attention to every word that he's saying more so than any press conference since the first one. Since he was hired as the Giants general manager. And I think there's some takeaways from it. Daniel Jones is going to be the main focus. Daniel Jones is done as the Giants quarterback, but my main focus wants to be on like how close that they think they are. But with Daniel Jones, was asked about him, said it's not all his fault. Everybody has a hand in this, but kept on talking about self-evaluation when asked about Daniel Jones. Like, we're going to do some self-evaluation at the bye week. He's done. He's going to get benched. They haven't said it, but it is done in their minds that they will have a new starting quarterback coming off of the bye week. Whether that's Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito, I don't know. Maybe they don't know. But Daniel Jones is no longer their quarterback. And he was asked by Dan Duggan of The Athletic that, are you happy with your quarterback plan for this year? And specifically mentioned a guy like Russell Wilson, who they had in for a visit, and gave a huge pause on that and finally said, yes, like I am. But you could tell that he wasn't. Like, he obviously doesn't believe that, but he wanted to save face because he doesn't love, the signing of Drew Lock right now. They don't have a ton of confidence in Drew Lock from what they've seen in him in practice, preseason, and limited, regular season action. And it's why I think they're actually considering playing Tommy DeVito. But here's my main takeaway and something I want to get at, because it's a good spin. And it's talking about one-score games and the fact that they're close, and inferring when talking about Daniel Jones and asked about the quarterback position later on that they are possibly a quarterback away. And then asked, like, why aren't you winning these one-score games? It's like, well, red zone. We got to talk about that. But he mentioned that they have the most one-score games in the history of the NFL this year. The entire NFL as a whole, and they have 5 of those. But to me, I never feel good about a one-score game when you have the worst record in the NFL. Yeah, who's going to have more one-score losses than you? You have the most losses in the NFL. You have 8 at week 10. Like, you have a better chance of having more one-score losses than the other teams. And you're also, you're last in the league in scoring. And he said, well, that's what we're going to look at this week, mentioning Daniel Jones, basically putting it on like Daniel Jones is the reason that we are losing. And he is a big piece of it. Was, asked about, a new QB and how the difference that can make, and reference the Texans and the Commanders. But here's something I want to say about one-score losses. Bad teams use that as justification. If he had built a good roster, right, he would be talking about the good roster. The only thing he said positively about the roster as a whole was this 2024 draft class. That's it. There was no other positive parts of the draft class that he really mentioned. Nothing. There was nothing that he used and he was looking for ways to justify his performance so far. And the only thing was, we're young, the 2024 draft class, we got guys performing for us and playing for us. But let's look at the 2020 Joe Judge Giants. They went 6-10 that year. So only 2 more losses on the entire season than what they have now. They lost 5 one-score games. The 2019 Giants, they went 4-12. They lost 5 one-score games. The 2018 Giants, they went 5-11. They lost 8 one-score games. So, yeah, teams that lose a lot of games, those games happen to be by 1 score. That's what the NFL is. And like Joe Schoen mentioned himself for some reason, this year has the most one-score games in NFL history through 10 weeks. In history. So that should make you feel even worse about it. So, like, congrats on 5 of your 8 losses through week 10 being 1 score. Now, the rebuttal to that, and this is what, Joe Schoen has been inferring at, and a lot of the fan base has said this too. And I want we've talked about this before, is that they're a QB away. If they have better quarterback play, they do win some of those one-score games. The QB away argument, to me, I think is one of the more flawed arguments in football media or, fandom. Because, like, which teams in the NFL aren't a QB away, right? And then what are we away from? Are we away from 9-8, 11-5, a Super Bowl contender? Also, like, it gives you an assumption that they'll draft the outlier QB that does carry the team, right? So that's a low percentage there that you even draft that guy. Like, let's talk about what's upcoming in this year's draft class. So you're putting all your weight on that. My question is the roster good? It also has an assumption that even if you get the good QB won't have any bad games, right? We always forget about that. That good quarterbacks have bad games. It happens to every single one of them. Um, you know, so like you can mention the Texans, what they did with C.J. Stroud, but you have to mention the defensive improvements that team made. They're also 18th in scoring this year, offense this year, with C.J. Stroud as their quarterback. They went 9-8 last year, and they're 6-4 this year with 2 wins versus the Colts, a win versus the Patriots, Jags, and Bears, and then their best one being versus the Bills. But that was, Josh Allen's worst completion percentage of his career, and it was down to the wire, right? Like that Texans team isn't flush with talent, and really where it's flush with talent is on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, with Stephon Diggs and then Nico Collins banged up, they're not a talented team, but they do have those players. But that's a better roster than what the Giants have right now. You can also look at the Commanders this year, and they've beaten bad teams, which is good, but they're also in year 1 of that rebuild, right? Like the Commanders roster is not a good roster, and it's not supposed to be. The quarterback is putting them over the hump, but that is not the reason that you've done a good job. It's because you're a good quarterback away. Everyone's good quarterback away. Yeah, look at the Commanders and take out Jaden Daniels. What are they? A really bad roster. Look at the Texans and take out C.J. Stroud, and what are they? A really bad roster. So that's the question. Is your roster good despite the fact that you haven't got the quarterback? And I don't think he has. So that's my main thing with it. When we talk about the one, like that's not a reason for optimism. Was asked about his first 2 draft classes, and he like justified them, saying, well, we needed players. We had holes to fill in those first 2 drafts. Well, guess what? This is why you don't draft for need, right? Talk about process, saying, oh, well, we have good process. We need the results to match. Well, that's not good process. So your 2 first NFL drafts were not good draft path, good process. And they've not been good results either. So what are they? Because now outside of your first round misses of Evan Neal and Deontay Banks, you drafted a limited slot wide receiver, an awful guard who you moved to offensive tackle, a 3rd string tight end, a bad backup safety, a one-trick pony wide receiver, a league average at best center, and the only round 5 to 7 pick that is useful at all is Micah McFadden, and there's been 8 of them, right? So the other 7 aren't even useful unless you want to put DJ Davidson being really bad as useful. The rest of them are either healthy scratches or been cut from the team. So again, have you done a good job building the roster? He's done a good job with the 2024 draft class, right? We always overrate our rookies, but I actually do really like this draft class. You have Malik Neighbors. Tyler Nubin hasn't made the splash plays, but I think he's a good player. Drew Phillips has been a reason for losing a couple games, with missed tackles versus the Commanders, and then giving up plays and coverage against the Steelers, but I think he's a good player. Theo Johnson, we need to see more, but I like Theo Johnson a lot. And then Tyrone Tracy's been a flat-out hit for the 5th round. So, I do like this draft class, but one draft class and one offseason is not a reason that you've done a good job in 3 years. Go look at Dave Gettleman's year 3. I think he did a pretty damn good job. The issue was 1, 2, and 4 were really bad. So, other quick things, was asked about his job security and very quickly said that, I expect to be back. Do you expect to be back? He said, yes. Very quickly. I do think he's confident. I don't think that he's really in jeopardy of not being here in year 4. Talks about communicating with ownership, and we have a good relationship. I expect him to get year 4. I think the main reason is that he deserves the blame for the Daniel Jones contract, but John Mara wanted to re-sign Daniel Jones. I'm not saying John Mara pushed him to re-sign Daniel Jones or forced him, but John Mara won't hold that decision so hardly against him because he agreed with it. Right? Where the Saquon thing, he's like, well, I disagreed with you on that one, right? I'll hold that one against you. He won't do it with the Daniel Jones one. And then him and Dable, I think, have sold John Mara on the idea well, we haven't even got our crack at the QB because we signed the QB that you wanted to sign. And Dave Gettleman got 4 years, so how am I going to get 4? So I'm pretty confident that they're going to get a 4th year. Other little things. Was asked about letting guys like Saquon and McKinney and others go. I didn't like his justification of, we got Tyrone Tracy and Tyler Nubin. Well, yeah, you created holes and you had to fill them. And those are both lesser players. Now, I agree with letting Saquon Barkley walk. Won't get into that whole debate. McKinney, not so much. I think they should have made a way to keep him, even to still do the Brian Burns stuff. You're very healthy cap-wise going forward. You could have just structured the contract to keep McKinney, and then you could either drafted Nubin to play next to him, or drafted Kamari Lassiter or Kool-Aid McKinstry like you wanted to do with that, first, second round pick. Anyway, so actually, no, that doesn't make sense. They would have been gone by that. But anyways, you could have, either drafted a different position that you liked, or again, keeping Tyler Newman with McKinney, which I would have been a fan with, by the way. I love having two great safeties. I think it's huge for your defense. So we'll talk about it more on tomorrow's mailbag pod and all that, but wanted to drop a quick reaction to this video. Like and subscribe. We're your one-stop shop for New York Giants coverage. See you on the next one. Until then, let's go Big Blue. Bam.